What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate. Look, I am so pumped because this conversation right here. Now, look, I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. Like, listen, this is gonna be kind of meta because I'm a pod about podding just for a second, okay? Living Corporate, we get pitches like every day, okay? Most of them, okay. Some of them, great, right? And then some of them are downright special. This was one of the downright special pitches that we received to engage someone that I have been a fan of for a while. And I think it's also humbling that there are people out there that I really consider like celebrities and or just people that I aspire to meet and that I would love to just engage and learn. And then like I get something from their group or camp that they want to, or that, you know, to come over here to Living Corporate. And I forget sometimes, like straight up, y'all, I forget about our reach. I forget about like the fact that, yo, like, no, we've been doing this now for half a decade. I forget about the fact that we have hundreds upon hundreds, almost 1,000 podcasts under our belt. I forget about, frankly, like the history of incredible conversations we've had. Like, and in terms of, I don't know if I always just like wear all of that on my shoulders every single moment. So there are moments when I just really get like, wow, this is incredible. And so this was one of those moments. You know, Living Corporate, we had the opportunity to sit down with Latasha Gillespie, who is the head of DEI at Amazon Studios. And we talk about a lot of different things. I'm not even going to like spoil it because we're about to get right into it. I do want to pause and say, the other week I announced the fact that Living Corporate is now my full-time job. I know it might be a surprise to some of y'all because like, man, you had a full-time job and was doing this, creating all this content all the time. I did. It was, frankly, as I look back, it's like, you know, I have a lot of my mentors are like, hey, Zach, this isn't sustainable. You got to stop. You got to figure this out. And then as things have continued to grow and change, it's made, frankly, the decision was taken out of my hands. I had to make the jump. But I'm so excited because as I now look at Living Corporate and I look at everything that we got going on, y'all see this podcast and y'all engage and check out our content and network. And I appreciate that. Please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Give us a review, all of that. Thank you. But what really excites me is the things that y'all don't see, the things that are coming down the pipeline. As you're listening to this on a Tuesday, Living Corporate Collective is live. We have our first event today. We have our very first event today talking about the purpose of the Living Corporate Collective, which is this virtual community of talent leaders focused on matters of workplace fairness, really meant to be a place where we don't just like admire problems, but where we share, collaborate, and innovate together. You know, there are plenty of other spaces out there that popped up after the murder of George Floyd and have sizzled since then, or fizzled, my bad. There was a lot of sizzle, not a lot of steak, but they fizzled since then. I'm excited about creating a dedicated, consistent space where we're having conversations and facilitating dynamic discussions around matters that are relevant to employee fairness, equity, inclusion. I'm excited about the fact that we were able to work with Lori Spicer Robertson, who is the CEO and founder of the DEI Collective. I'm thankful for her willingness to share her platform and space as we build something together. I'm excited about the dozens of people that have signed up. And I'm thankful and super excited for Dr. Janisha White, who is Living Corporate's head of corporate community. And I'm thankful for the fact that we have a dedicated website, living-corporate.com. That's right. Please say the dash. /collective. And if you register, you will have access to this space, right? It is a registrant only space. So everyone can't just click it and see it. If you click it and you don't have permission, it's going to say, oops, you need permission to access this content. But the sign up is literally free. All you need to do is register with your LinkedIn and fill out a very quick form. It's like literally 15 seconds. And we're going to be doing a lot of stuff in there, between sharing resources and research, between having a bunch of different calls on a monthly basis. And then also cataloging all of our past calls, so you can go back and you can look at the discussions that we've had to date. And the reason why we want to make it secure is because we want it to be a safe place or a brave space, I'll say. We want it to be a brave space for leaders who are trying to do the right thing in this season. And frankly, because of this culture, this moment that we're in, where there's just fear and anxiety about doing anything that would seem to create any level of fairness for anybody other than the majority, people are nervous. People are looking for guidance. And so I'm excited about us coming together and having really frank conversations about that, and frankly, giving space to one another for us all to talk and learn from one another. And so that's the Living Corporate Collective. The other thing that we got going on is our learning platform. We're going to be sharing more and more about our e-learning platform. We're excited about the folks that have already signed up. Some of the brands that we're working with who've already signed up. We're excited to host some webinars and some different spotlights to talk about what we're doing in that space. And I'm excited for y'all to see and y'all to journey with us as we continue to grow. Okay. All that being said, I want to make sure that y'all click the links in the show notes. Okay. Learn more about everything we got going on by clicking the link in the show notes. Oh, shoot. And I almost forgot. And I'm excited about our Kickstarter. Okay. I'm excited about the fact that, about a week and a half ago, we actually did launch our second Kickstarter. If y'all don't remember, unless you forgot, it's okay, because this was back in 2020. A lot of stuff was going on. I don't know, 2020 also feels like yesterday. But anyway, in 2020, we launched our first Kickstarter, and it went incredibly well, right? We had a very small goal, and it was overfunded by 410%. We launched a Kickstarter about a week and a half ago, really in the spirit of brand awareness and kind of getting our name out there. And I'm appreciative of the fact that Creative Capital, a member of Kickstarter's Forward Funds program, has backed our project. Okay. For those who don't know, Kickstarter has a Forward Funds program. And what they do is they select and back creators that align with their vision for a more creative and equitable world, right? And so, and they specifically back Black and Brown, historically marginalized creators in the U.S. And so I'm thankful and I'm excited that we've received a pledge from them on Kickstarter. And, I want to make sure that y'all know that we have a Kickstarter, not only support it, but really to tell other people about what's going on. We have a whole explainer video in there. You got my voice now, I'm like a little cartoon. I'm moving all around. So just make sure you check it out. We have a lot of stuff going on. Click the link in the show notes, the links in the show notes to learn more, but it's all in there. Okay. Anyway, all that being said, we're going to pay some bills and we're going to get in this conversation with Latasha, head of DEI at Amazon Studios. We'll see you in a second. Latasha, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Listen, thank you for being a guest. Look, we're going to talk about your current role soon. But first, were there any critical or personal career experiences that shaped who you are today? Because I see you, right? I see you I see your face on big spreads and features and stuff, right? You outside. You're the head of DI for a multinational brand, I'm gonna say arguably top 3 largest brands in the world. But before we got to Latasha and how she is today, what shaped you? If you were to say this was a moment, what were those moments that shaped you to be where you are today?
Well, a lot. I think, thank you for having me again. This is super fun. I'm excited to be here. You're doing amazing work. I got some questions for you too. So, but I'm gonna answer yours first. I will tell you that, my family, my father being who he is and always instilled in me as a little girl that my voice mattered at a young age. That really helped carry me all the way through school, all the way through college, and into the corporate world. And then most importantly, my faith. Just knowing that I am here on assignment and I have an assignment to do, and I know who I am and whose I am. So those things anchor me. But I'll tell you an interesting corporate experience I had that kind of really, I would say, shifted my perspective, but it kind of jolted my perspective. My previous company, we were having a women's leadership summit, and we had a variety of speakers coming. And this one particular panel had these two women on it. One was a partner at EY who I knew very well. And the other woman was actually in the sports and entertainment world, you know, as a CFO or I don't remember her exact title, but pretty high up in one of the major leagues. And I'm listening to these two women talk, and I remember them talking about what they would do or when they realize an organization, you know, doesn't have their best interest at heart or is not set up for them to succeed, they leave. And I'm sitting here like, huh? And one of the, I'm like, I've never been in an organization that was set up for somebody that looks like me to be successful. And I'm listening to these white women, let me say that, these two white women having that conversation and their freedom of opportunity, right? And now one of them I know really well. Like I said, she was a partner at EY, so I know that she is a stay-at-home husband. So I know she's the breadwinner. And I didn't have a stay-at-home husband, but my husband was a 20-year elementary school teacher, and y'all know y'all don't pay teachers enough.
Not at all.
Not at all. So I'm listening to these two women, and I know one of them is in a similar boat as as I was in, and I'm listening to her just be so. And I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? I got a mortgage, I got family that depends on me, I got this and I got that. And when I heard these women, it jolted me, and I had to stop and say, why am I not thinking like that? Why are the women who look like me, who I'm having this conversation with on a daily basis, not thinking like that? Why do we feel like we have to stay somewhere? And it was the first time that I really, you know, got out of this mindset of really playing it safe. And I had to ask myself, you know, what's the risk? What's the worst thing that could happen if I show up every day 100% authentically me, always professional, but stop doing the mental gymnastics in my head about how people are going to take the things I say? What would happen if I did the thing that was hard but was right but required courage, knowing that the outcome could have been negative for me personally? What's the worst thing that could happen? And when I start really dialing in and going through with the worst thing that could happen, Zach, I turn the light on the boogeyman.
Come on.
Because I was like, the only thing you can do is fire me.
That's it.
Okay. That's it. You ain't gonna stop my mama from loving me. That ain't gonna make my husband leave me. That ain't gonna make my children see me any differently. That ain't gonna make my friends stop picking up the phone. The worst thing you can do is fire me, but I will be living authentically me.
You know what, Latasha? So first of all, you know, I could tell, I could feel the anointing on my microphone, and I knew this was church. You know what I'm saying? You talk about whose I am. I had to ask my keyboard and organist to go ahead and. You know what I'm saying? I was like, well, I'm about to, boy, come on now.
Put my back, Zach.
I'm about to pull out the tambourine also. I give you a good 1 foot shot over here. I could tell you had some pregnant pauses while you were talking to us. I said, oh, she's preaching. Okay. So so let me say. So let me say this is, I love this because 100%, right? Like there's this, I've experienced something similar, and notice something. There's this deep fear that a lot of folks have. So I'm not a black woman, right? So but I will say I empathize, and I'll say that black men carry it too. Black men also, there's some things we don't change because we need power. But so that's a whole separate conversation. The point is, there's this fear. There's this fear that we have. There's this fear that we have as it pertains to, like, we feel like we just have to stay in situations that, one, don't honor our time, don't honor our gifts, don't honor our purpose, and don't honor our person. And there's this there's this thing we just feel like we shackle ourselves to these things. So I'm right there with you. It's funny because I would tell people, this kind of happened to me about 5 years ago. I said, you know what? How can I be more authentic every day? Like, so I'm authentic. How can I want to challenge myself. Let's say I believe that I am walking in the most authentic version of myself. But what does it look like for me to push myself to be even more authentic tomorrow?
Right.
And that's so I love that. And your point around like, what is the worst that can happen? I think we gas up in our heads like, yo, like this job is everything. If this I don't have a job,
everything. Right. And it's not. And if we sometimes can embrace the fact that if that window closes, if that door closes, there's a window waiting for us.
Come on.
You know what I mean? And I think at times we have to be pushed into those situations where we're somewhere where it's either not, where it's toxic, or to your point, it's just not honoring your purpose. There's something greater we've been called to do. But a lot of times we like to sit back in the comfort of what we know, even when the comfort ain't even really comfortable.
Come on. Real talk. And that's 100%. You know, now, because I don't want you to lose it, you said you had some questions for me. So I'm going to give you some space to ask your questions to me.
I want to know, what part of Mississippi you from?
What? Wait a minute now. How you know about that?
See, I do my research too.
Okay. So yeah. So look, so I was born in Rome, Georgia, but both sides of my family are from Mississippi. So my mom was born in Ridgeland.
Okay.
And she went to Tougaloo.
Tougaloo. Okay.
Yeah, and then my dad was also born in Ridgeland, and he went to Jackson State.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
So I appreciate you asking that. A lot of my family still live in Mississippi. Half of my dad's side moved to Rock Island, Illinois, which is like part of the Quad Cities. If you know.
I know where that's at. Okay, I lived in Peoria for right.
Oh, this is too crazy.
It's crazy because I'm gonna tell you. I'm sorry, you said your dad moved to Rock Island, and then you were about to say something about your mom. Where's she at now?
My mom moved around. She's actually a principal in Dallas, but she was background education. She's been in education for the past 36 years. My wife is an educator, so like there's a lot of synergy here. I didn't know all that, so that's crazy.
So my father was born and raised in Memphis, South Memphis.
Okay.
My mother was born and raised in Holly Springs, Mississippi, or as we say, Holly Springs.
Yes.
And so I had a lot of cousins that went to Rust College, in Holly Springs, and now and then for 2.5 years, my job actually sent me down south, and I was living in Olive Branch.
Oh, wow.
Yep, I worked in Corinth, Mississippi, or as we say, Corinth.
Yes,
Corinth, and I lived in Olive Branch. Yep.
Wow, that's incredible. Yep. Yeah, I mean, so it's funny, right? Like, not to like go too off on a tangent. What I'm realizing is, so I'm extremely country, right? But people who just kind of like see me off the street or whatever, like they presume so many things. And there's like this interesting thing, like I do want to talk about, perhaps in another conversation, like the diaspora, like the Black diaspora, like just the Black American diaspora. It's really different, right? So like you meet like Southern Black people, like compared to like East Coast versus West Coast Black people to like Black Northerners. It's genuinely like different cultures. And so it's been really like a journey, even like with living corporate the past 5 years, just talking and engaging. Now, of course, as a consultant, I was like consultant PwC and Accenture and Capgemini. So like I've met a whole bunch of different people. Don't get me wrong. It's just very, very interesting as you engage like corporate Black professionals from different spaces. Like they genuinely do move a little different. Each they do.
And Pacific Northwest Black people are a whole different kind of different.
So I've been told.
But I think, to your point around that diaspora, though, but I think a lot of that feeds into even how we show up into the workplace. And so for a lot of folks with very Southern roots, very rural Southern roots.
Yes.
Right? because it's a difference with very rural Southern roots. Like when you hit, the PWC, the Cap Gemini, the Caterpillar, the Amazon, like you don't go leave those good jobs.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
You're hey, you got, it's almost like, yo, you caught something. Good.
Yeah.
Don't let it go. Absolutely.
Right. They look at you crazy if you're like, no, I'm moving on and I'm doing my own thing or whatever it is. And they're like, what?
Latasha, let me tell you. Now, it took a while, right? But so I just now recently made the decision to exit my 9 to 5 and really focus on living corporate full time because we've been going now.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much. Right, so we built some really great partnerships, relationships, and everything made sense. But I'm gonna tell you the truth of the matter is, probably if my cultural context had been different, and I'm not talking about if I was white. I'm talking about just if I was maybe in a different space or whatever, I probably would have made the jump 3 years ago. Yep. But I was like, nah, let me make sure that everything, I need extra saving. Okay, I need this client list to be at this level. I need revenue, so I'm right there with you. Now look, we're going to keep on going. We're going to run out of time. I told you I was going to honor this time. So here we go. You've been with Amazon since 2017. I'm curious, what drew you to Amazon, and then what's keeping you here 6 years later?
Listen, it's this exact conversation we're having though, because I knew that I had been at Caterpillar for 20 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days. Yeah. Right. And it was interesting for me because it was I would tell you how it started 10 years, probably. Okay, maybe not 10. I'm exaggerating. Maybe 5 or 6 years before I actually left. I was living in San Diego, working for Caterpillar, and I had just went to this pin celebration. So when someone had a monumental year, 15 years, 20 years, 25, whatever, you would get a pin. And this woman was getting her pin. She had been with the company 45 years.
Wow.
45. In the manufacturing plant. She worked out on the line.
Wow.
Betty. Yep. And I remember going home that evening in my kitchen, and I was like, oh, I wonder who's going to come to my 30-year pin. Now I'm thinking about my 30-year pin at this point, which is 10 plus years down the road, right? Wow. I'm like, I wonder who's going to come to my 30-year pin, and I wonder if such and such will still be around. And I'm going through this all in my head. And I remember I heard the voice of God say, don't be so sure about that. I was like, what you mean? What do you mean, Jesus? Hold up. He was like, I'm just saying, don't be so sure about that. And that was the first, and because of who I am and how I operate, God knows sometimes I can be stubborn. So he has to give me time with things.
Sure.
So he dropped that seed right there to be like, this, you may not be there 30 years. Don't count on it. And that was interesting because a lot of Caterpillar people were lifers. So I said that day, I said, Lord, let me hear the whisper. So if I'm supposed to turn left, turn right, do something different, let me hear the whisper. Because I think what often happens is when we ignore or are too busy to hear the whisper, then we slam into the brick wall. And then it becomes a forcing function for you to go do something that you were supposed to do back when he was whispering. And I was like, I don't want the forcing function. Let me hear the whisper. And so fast forward, I was in Singapore working. I was supposed to be there for 3 to 5 years. This was 2015. And And I said then, I was like, I have a window. I have a window in which I'm either going to make a decision to stay here for life or leave. And it was based on my age and how many more years I thought I wanted to work. And I was like, because at some point you're going to be too deep in here and you're not going to be able to go anywhere else because, other folks might not see you being able to transition into a different space. So I said, okay, and I told God, I was like, if it's for me, let me know that I know that I know that I know. And a series of different events happened, and they gave me the sense that, okay, it might be time for you to be open to something different. And I didn't actively do anything, but I was getting my mind ready. Okay, you might need to be open to something different. Amazon called me, and I'm in Singapore on an expat assignment, living my best life. My oldest son was graduating from high school. We were about to take him to Howard in the fall, and they were like, hey, we want to talk to you about this, coming to Amazon. I'm going to be in town such and such a day. And I was like, sure. So I meet up with the guy for drinks and we're talking and we're having the conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I'm like, I feel like you're trying to talk me out of this job. He's like, actually, I am. I think this job is too small for you, but I do think you should be an Amazonian. And I was like, well, we'll see. So when I took my son to college in the summer to go to Howard, they asked me if I'd fly to Seattle, and I said yes. And it was in that conversation that I saw all of the interesting possibilities. And I thought, if a company can create stores where you can shop and not have to have a cashier, then clearly y'all can do something about D&I.
Come on now.
So I just thought it was an exciting opportunity. I was scared. I was nervous. I was on a texting basis with my outgoing CEO. We were actually going through a CEO transition at Caterpillar, and I had a relationship with the outgoing and the incoming CEO because I had worked for him several times before he got that high. And I had supported him as his HR director and whatnot. So I knew both of them really well, personable. And, I knew where all the bodies were buried. I was good.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was good made me say, that's exactly why you need to leap.
Wow.
So if it's not scaring you, then you're not in the right place. And I always tell people, young people, if you're not living life on the edge, you're taking up too much space. And so I had to tell myself. And that actually was, yeah.
No, I cut you off. Keep going.
No, that was the precipice of me saying yes to that. But it was interesting because, and actually 6 months even before that happened, Amazon called me and I told them, you know what? I want my youngest son to graduate here while we live in Singapore too. Call me in 2 years. That's what I told them originally. And then the guy called back and actually said, well, we actually have something in Singapore. Let me talk to you about it. And I was like, okay. And that's when we met up. But it ended up being the Seattle role. And I think the thing that has kept me here more than anything else really is the fact that, listen, corporate America is corporate America. I don't care whose name is on the door. I don't care what values and missions you have on the wall. To a large degree, corporate America is corporate America. But I think that the thing that makes this work for me is the people that I get to do this work with. And I work for an amazing woman who, she's the first leader I've ever worked for that I didn't have to script with D&I talking points.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so I ain't met one of them yet, so good for you. Yes.
Right. And I have managed to build a function that didn't exist before I got into this role. So this is my second role at Amazon. I started off leading DEI for Amazon Corporate, where I got to work really closely with Jeff Bezos and his direct reports and launch a strategy back in 2017 and 18 because we hadn't had one. And that was an amazing experience. I learned so much just by being in the room, right?
Yeah.
With folks like that. And so that was an incredible, that was like graduate school, sitting in those meetings, listening to the questions Jeff would ask. And then when I got asked to come down to Amazon Studios, a couple years in, I came down here and I got to build this function from nothing. We didn't have a DEI function for content. So I don't do HR work at all. My team is responsible for representation in front of and behind the camera, above and below the line, making sure that we don't perpetuate harmful stereotypes and tropes, and making sure that, every production is accessible to all people. So that's fun, building something from the ground up and then getting a bunch of amazing, super talented, smarter than I am people around me to help, take it to the next level. That's been a blast.
That's incredible. To that end, right, to the point of the core mission and function of your work, let's talk about the intersection of diversity and creativity, especially in this season where diversity and inclusion is under incredible attack. And I'm not saying that diversity and inclusion has not historically been an attack. I mean, honestly, if you look at the history of this country, pretty much since 1968, there's been subversive efforts to basically retract. And honestly, even if you think historically before that, after the passage of the 13th and 14th Amendment, there's been really it's been this cyclical motion of progress and retreat. So, but all that being said, do you think it's understated how valuable having folks from different perspectives and experiences is to the creative process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you give me an example of like, you know, where you've seen like, wow, this wouldn't have been this way, or this wouldn't have looked this way, or this wouldn't have been the experience if we didn't have some level of diversity, gender, generational, racial, orientation? Like, do you have anything where you've seen it like, wow, in real time, like this is exactly why we do what we do?
Listen, I mean, excuse me, it's in every aspect of the creative process. Really is benefits. And matter of fact, my team, we've been doing some studies looking at what happens when your above the line decision makers, right, are diverse in nature in terms of there's gender diversity, racial diversity, sexual identity, orientation diversity. Like you see a difference in every other part. You see a difference in everybody they hire. You see a difference in everybody who's on camera. Like you see a complete difference across the board. But I'll give you a couple real life examples that we have been talking about these recently. So Lord of the Rings, one of our biggest shows. Yeah. The breakout star in that show has been Ishmael Cruz, an Afro-Latino, Black man from Puerto Rico. Yeah. Which means, and he's the first person of color to play an elven role, which in the Tolkien universe is a huge deal, right? Yes. But as an Afro-Latino, that brother turns 4 different shades of brown depending on what time of year it is. Right? Yeah. And so when you think about the importance of having even the technical crew, like the makeup and lighting people who understand that. So when you see this beautiful Black man with those elven ears, right, those prosthetics that they have to put on and make him look that way, that it actually blends and matches and looks like his skin. And what we don't understand is for an actor, the ability to know that someone knows what they're doing on things like that, give them the freedom to fully engulf themselves or, into the character. Because if I'm worried about whether or not you can see my ears, the prosthetics on my face, or they don't match my real skin tone, it's hard for me to really be fully invested into this character and give you my best performance if I'm subconscious about the way I look. Right? And so, that is super important. You think Swarm, huge breakout show for us with Dominique Fishback, right? Yeah. Like Swarm was, like, you couldn't have done that show had it not been one for the creative mind of a Donald Glover. No, nobody else could have done that story, right? 100%. That's the creative mind of a Donald Glover. But even with that, this show was centered around young women, this pop culture phenomenon. And he was smart enough to have a co-creator with him, Janine Neighbors, who is a talented, brilliant Black woman. And most people don't know this, Malia Obama was in the writer's room. So I think, having diverse perspectives and experiences is so critical to the creative process. I mean, everything from in front of the camera to act the story itself. One of our biggest shows in the past year has been Lord of the Rings. Ishmael Cruz is our breakout star in that show. And he is the first, person of color to play one of the elven roles in the Tolkien universe, which is just incredible, right? It's a huge deal. And as an Afro-Latino man, because his brother's from Puerto Rico, he turns 4 different shades of brown between, depending on what time of year it is. So for him, like, it's super important that we have the right makeup folks that are doing his prosthetic ears. We have the right lighting people that understand how to light him depending on what time of the year. Because when he is confident in how he looks and feels and embodies that character, he's going to give you the best performance ever. But if he's worried about whether or not you can see the prosthetics on his face and whether or not they blend in or they look like a different color, it's hard for him to relax and just flow into the role of the character. So, that's important. It's important in the writer's room, especially when you're trying to tell a story that's not yours. So I love the fact Gloria Calderon-Collette, wonderful, talented creator, writer, very sensitive and smart. With Love, her show on Amazon, it's called With Love. They have such an amazing story of this multi-generational family. And in that family is a trans woman who is a doctor. And Gloria is smart enough to know that's not my lived experience, So I need to have a writer's room that includes, right, people who either identify as trans or non-binary or on the LGBTQ spectrum. Like, I need that real life experience in that writer's room to make sure we get this character right. And she's done a beautiful job with it. And because of that, you see a woman who's a physician. You don't see a trans trope. Breakout show Swarm. Did you see Swarm, Zach?
I did.
Yo.
Fire.
Dominique Fishback.
Killed that.
Literally. And figuratively. Right?
Yes.
You couldn't have got a pop culture phenom show like Swarm without the mind of a Donald Glover. Like, it takes somebody in that world that understands that. But he was also smart enough to know we're telling the story from a woman's perspective. He had a co-creator, Janine Neighbors, who was brilliant and talented in her own right. And they even, again, it's a YA perspective at that, which is also important, which Donald isn't anymore. None of us are. We long for those days. But a lot of people don't know Malia Obama was in that writer's room.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then the thing I'm binging at the moment is Summer I Turned Pretty with Jenny Han. Jenny Han is a brilliant Asian woman who is steeped and an expert in the YA space. She writes her novels from that. Her movies have been fantastic. I'm enjoying this series, and again, it's because she's smart enough to understand what her lived experience is and how to bring that to life on camera. I just think that we all listen. I'm a little black girl from Chicago. That's the lived experience I can give you.
I love that. I
can't give you someone else's, and I have to be smart enough to know I need to surround myself with other people to make sure that we're authentically telling these stories. Because I'm gonna tell you, if we do this work right, if we do it right, what happens is we entertain you. Like, you're talking about Swarm, you're talking about Lord of the Rings. Like, this is a must-see show. I love this. You're talking about it. But also, not only are we entertaining you, if we do our jobs right, we're increasing humanity just a little bit.
Come on. Real talk, though. You know, so there's something there, right? Like, even like when I think about living corporate, my biggest thing was we started by saying, look, we just want to tell authentic stories and like really center and amplify historically marginalized voices. Like, what does it look like to have authentic conversations about diversity and inclusion, even if we don't use all those words all the time?
Yeah.
And I just did something in me, Latasha. I didn't do any market research. I didn't do a bunch of surveys. I didn't do any of that. Something in me just told me, like, look, if you sit down with people who are from historically marginalized backgrounds, or even from the majority, but you really focus and talk about how these environments need to shift and change for the benefit of the most marginalized, which then a rising tide lifts all boats. If you sit back and you have conversations where you're really centering those stories and those voices, those experiences, people are going to be attracted to that, and they're going to get things from it, right? Because like, you're absolutely right. Like, authenticity is entertaining, right? Like, people enjoy. I think, like, now, side note, random, but I really now Drake is like in this new, like, kind of like villain era, but like, I really enjoyed Drake early on because he was vulnerable, right? A lot of people liked that, right? Like, that was attractive, right? The idea of like, yo, I'm sad, I'm drunk, about to call my ex-girl and be upset because I wanted to get back with me. Like, people are like, oh, that's weak. It's like, well, no, that's authentic. Like, there's something relatable and engaging there. And I think, like, we're in this era where I see a lot of people reclaiming their power, and they're reclaiming their power through being authentic, through being vulnerable, through being honest. And so, like, 100%, like, these stories, the stories that you mentioned, like, what sticks out for them to me is their authenticity of, man, I really can resonate with, I can tell that there's a genuine performance happening here. It's not necessarily this veneer of whatever. It's honest, as you know. I'm seeing something that I know is real, and real recognize real. So
exactly, listen, have you ever watched a show where you like, I can tell nobody from this experience?
So I'm not right, because I'm not messy. I'm not gonna say, but yes, there's some shows where I was like, there's a bunch of us on screen. And I'm like, who wrote wrote this?
Who?
This is not.
Zach, my line is, who thought this was a good idea?
Who thought this was a good idea? And then because there'd be times when I look at these trailers for these shows, and I look at my wife and I say, I know that there probably was at least one ambiguous person in the writing room who said, hey, we shouldn't do this. And y'all said, go ahead.
And listen, and y'all said, we got this, we know better.
Yes.
Like, no, it's gonna land, trust me. Like, how, and you what lived experience do you have that tells you that? That's my new favorite line. When I'm the only in the room and somebody tries to tell me what women think or what black people think,
yes,
you know, or what chicks with natural hair think, I'd be
yes.
like, tell me what lived experience you have that tells you that that's accurate.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
How did you get there? Okay, so to that end, right? Like, you know, I want to talk about Amazon Studios a little bit more. In 2021, you implemented a D&I strategy and a playbook. Now, look, we've seen expansion and contraction in the D&I space for a long time. Like to be clear, right? From when diversity inclusion was really like affirmative, like just called affirmative action, to, you know, all these permutations of DEI, DI, IND, Jedi, whatever the case is. We've seen expansion and contraction, but the last 3 years, I believe the vacillations have been more extreme than other seasons. How, if at all? What I mean by that is, so let's quick story time, Latasha. So, you know, back like right before George Floyd was murdered. By the way, George Floyd, he and I were in the same ministry, local Houston ministry, when he lived down here in Houston, because he would go to CUNY Homes and Third Ward. So like we have a bunch of mutual friends. And then and then his murderer actually lived 15 minutes away from my dad, because my dad lives in Minnesota. So when all the protests and stuff were happening, they were picking it in front of that man's house. That was like literally 15 minutes up the street from my pop. So all of it very close to home. Because I remember people called him Big George. Like it was a whole. I remember. But the point is that right before that happened, I remember Living Corporate was reaching out. Hey, we'd like to interview so and so. Hey, can we work with you? Can we work with that? And people were telling me on the cool, hey, we just slashed our D&I budget. Hey, we just let this person go. Or I'd be emailing somebody and I get a bounce back. And then as soon as the murder of George Floyd happened and was televised, those same brands would come back. Or I would see, they actually like reinvested in so that's what I mean about like expansion and contraction is, like I would say late 2019, early 2020, D&I was getting deprioritized. We saw it get like aggressively, exponentially ramp back up. And then now we're seeing it contract. Right, we're seeing it contract again. So I'm curious how, if at all, your initial strategy and playbook is adapting in light of just everything we're looking at, political landscape, election coming up in a year. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I'm gonna make one correction. That strategy actually came about well before you saw it launched publicly.
Fair. Okay.
So, and again, that's where you gotta be in the right organization with the right kind of leaders, because we had implemented internally those same policies. Many of those same policies we did add to it, but most of those policies had been implemented internally back in 2019. Yep, before the murder of George Floyd. And I appreciate that every time you have said it, you have said the murder of George Floyd. And I think we have to remember that. So thank you. Yes. So yeah, most of those things were codified and shared internally only. And after the murder of George Floyd, we realized that it was really important to be public and transparent about those policies. And so that's why we actually released the inclusion policy and playbook in a format that we did a lot of work also with our creators, our external partners. So like, you know, the Daniel Day Kims, the Gloria Calderon-Collette's, the Viola Davises, like we actually sat down with those folks and said, listen, if you're going to, you know, do work with Amazon Studios, then we're asking you to hold hands and do this together with us. Like, this is what we want to do. And it was great when you had people like Greg Daniels, who is a fantastic creator of some of the biggest shows you've ever seen. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. You know, Parks and Rec and right? So people love his work,
Yeah.
and for him to say thank you, like I've been wanting to do better, but I wasn't sure what good looked like. This at least gives me a roadmap,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
so that kind of stuff. And so that was really important for us to roll that out and be transparent. And we're constantly listen. The thing about a mechanism, and Amazon is huge on mechanisms, is a mechanism is where you have inputs and tools. You have something that you fix, and then you have outputs, and you have to constantly be evaluating those outputs to ask, is the mechanism still working? And so if you don't audit and regularly adapt and update a mechanism, then you just have bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's no longer a mechanism. It's just red tape. So you have to constantly be asking yourself, is this doing what it set out to do? And if it's not, how are you adapting and adjusting? And that's the thing I love about some of the Amazon kind of quirky ways, peculiar ways of doing things, that it's stuff like that that challenges you to look into that and to constantly be unafraid to be like, yep, we thought that was right. We now have the data and we realize we're wrong. We're pivoting this. So, if luckily for us, we're not pivoting, but it is allowing us to fine tune and say, this is what we thought in this particular area. But now that we have years of data, we can actually, say that we think there's a better way to do this. And so we're going to change that target, or we're going to change that metric to look like this.
Yeah. It's interesting, like to that end, so I come from like really cut my teeth in consulting for real. Right. So like, and so much of it's change management. And so part of change management is that current impact assessment. The change impact analysis, forgive me. So it's like when you think about like, okay, where are we at today? But if there's a level of analysis, current state assessment, and frankly, like data analysis that comes into all of this so that you can actually be informed on how you need to progress forward. What excites me is what I'm hearing is you do that. Like you're it's not about like using a bunch of like random jargon to then create a strategy. No, you want to be objective and data informed with where you're starting so that you can actually come up with some KPIs that make sense and drive business forward.
Yeah, because I can now tell you unequivocally that when you have diversity in those, what we call ATL, above the line, decision-making seats, right? And there's a handful of them, right? Director, showrunner, producer. When you have diversity in those chairs, this is how it affects the diversity of the whole project, right?
Yeah.
And to your point though, the problem, and this is why DEI has such a bad rap, because if you only want to do unconscious bias training, actually it doesn't even work. Harvard Business Review did a study and showed that companies that mandated mandatory training and unconscious bias training, 5 years later they had worse results in terms of diversity in their ranks than companies who didn't.
Not even shocking, because it's not shocking at all, Latasha. I mean, like, here's the reality, right? It's like we've been like rinsing, by we, I mean like just this space, like a lot of rinse and repeat of the same things, right? Like, okay, well, unconscious bias training, and then like I think what was really frustrating for me, just observationally, right? Like, after the murder of George Floyd, like you have all these new actors coming in, literally like trying to attack and shame white folks in charge, saying, well, you're a white supremacist and this is why your whiteness is bad and you need to reject this, and you're individualizing and antagonizing people, and then getting upset when they go, well, this doesn't work. Well, it's like, well, yeah, that doesn't work. What are you trying to build? Right? Like, so my camera's off, but one of the people I have in the background is Kwame Ture, right? And so Kwame Ture was talking about how he's like, revolutionary. Some people call themselves revolutionaries, but all they talk about is destroying. It's like, you're not a revolutionary. You got to be thinking about how you build things. And so I'm not saying to coddle folks. I'm not saying that. What I'm aiming to articulate is like, be data informed with whatever it is you say and do.
That's right.
That way, your recommendations can have some weight, and then, frankly, look, like, have some grace and some self-awareness when making these recommendations, so that you can actually move things forward, right? Like, none of the organizations that you step into are going to like suddenly be all Latino, or all
No.
or all South Asian. Like they're going like
Right.
so what does it look like to work in a way that builds coalition and partnership so you can actually move forward? And while at the
Right.
same time not being inauthentic, going back to the top of our call. So
That's right. And also understanding that you don't be performative either.
right.
So like the whole Rooney rule. The Rooney rule actually doesn't work. If you only have, listen, and again, you can look it up in Harvard Business Review. People have studied these things. When you try to hire and there's one person, one applicant that is different from all the others, they have a 0% chance of getting hired, statistically. Mm-hmm. Now, and it goes back to first grade. When your teacher gave you that paper and it had 2 apples and an orange and it said, one of these things is not like the other. Which one is it? Right? Human nature, when one thing sticks out and is different, we naturally reject it, which is why when you talked about the one ambiguous person in a writer's room, it's the reason why you can't have one. You need at least 30% to get any kind of monumental change, because if you get 30%, then that one person has additional allies, and then if each of those people in there make another ally, now the room is more like 60% of people who are either championing or advocating for inclusion.
100%. 100%. Now, no, keep going.
No. You know me, you know.
Okay, so before I get to the last question, I have one more question before that. So
we only got one more.
You look at the time. I told you we were going to honor the time. So
okay,
you can always come back. So you're welcome.
Okay.
So is there anything you're holding hope for in your role and the work between now and 2025?
Yeah, I actually, I don't think we need another DEI, A, B, D, C, E, F, G acronym or name. I actually hope that our work really is about a growth strategy. Right? I really hope that listen, there is a need in this world for social justice and equity work. 100%. That should happen. But to your point around, and this is just my opinion and mine alone, don't DM me, don't email me. I reserve the right to my opinion. I think though, in the spaces that we're in, we have to get people, to your point, if we want folks to see the value in this, and if we want folks to get on board and get excited about that, think about the things that get them excited. It's about how are we growing the business? It's about how are we expanding the business? It's about how are we obtaining and delighting and keeping new customers and reducing churn, right? In any company, name it. I don't know any company, any Fortune 500 company that's not in business to do that, right?
Yeah.
So if we can think about it from the standpoint of, the beauty is we got demographics on our side.
100%.
So if you think, right? So if you want to grow this company, if you want to expand this company, if you want to gain new customers, delight them, and retain them, then do you understand who they are and what they need? Well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you go find some people who have that lived experience to help inform you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And bring them into your organization with the goal of, because I don't know, this is why at Amazon you can't talk, at least in Amazon Studios, on the content side. Now I can't tell you what HR is doing. On the content side, you do not get to talk about DEI because it's quote unquote the right thing to do.
Yeah.
In Amazon Studios content side, when we talk about DEI, we talk about it based on our leadership principle of customer obsession. Leaders start with customers and work backwards. They work to earn and keep customer trust. That's why. That's the work I'm doing. So when we show up to go talk to the drama team, or we show up to go talk to the comedy team, or we show up to go talk to the movies team, we're here in the name of customer obsession, people. Let's figure out how we make sure in this story we're telling, we are earning and keeping customer trust. So my hope by 2025 is that, rather than, folks having the mental connotation they have around the DEI departments, that it shifts to, these are the people that are going to help me grow.
I love that. Well, this has been a fire conversation. I have my one last question, and we're going to get to it.
Okay. I'm sad, but I'm ready.
I'm sad too, but I'm not too sad because we're going to talk after we turn this recording light off. All right. So what? What 3 points of advice would you give to executive leaders who are trying to do the right thing in this tumultuous, uncertain, some would even argue fear-driven season, but don't know where to start?
I think the first thing they have to do is, understand your organizational value and mission. Like, what are you in business to do? Right? At Amazon, we're in business to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. So if I understand that, then I understand to make sure my DEI strategy is built around it, is ladders up to it, and be integrated in it and ingrained in it. And so I would tell every organization to think about who you are as an organization, your values, your mission statement, and how does DEI help you solve for that. The second thing I would tell a leader to do is, listen, everybody is, passionate about people, but that's not what you need when you are trying to find a DEI leader. You need a competent leader who understands the business, who understands data, and who also understands people, right? And so I would say find a competent DEI leader who has proven results. And then when you bring them into their organization, set them up for success. Don't stick them in HR. Don't bury them in some other part of the organization. Give them access to the CEO, to the senior leaders. And then the last thing I would tell, last piece of advice I'd give to executive leaders is, you care about, where your money is where your treasure is. So if you care about the work and want to do it the right way, resource it. Give it head count. Fund it appropriately, and not try to make people do it off the side of their desks. It should be built in, not bolted on.
Come on now. This has been a fire conversation. Latasha, I'm so excited about this interview going out. You're a friend of the show, obviously. And we look forward to having you. You're a cousin, straight up. You're a cousin of the show. Obviously. Yep. And we look forward to having you back. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
I would love it. Thank you so much for this, Zach. This has been such a wonderful conversation for me, and I'm really excited about all the work that you're doing and the space you're making for all of us out here living these corporate lives.
Yes, ma'am. Talk to you later. Peace.
All right. Take care.
And we're back. Yo, shout out to Latasha at Amazon Studios. I told y'all we had a good time. I told y'all it was fun. We laughed a lot on and off mic, and I'm excited for us to continue to work together. Latasha, you're always welcome back to the show. You know that. I told you that, but I'm going to say it on the record in front of everybody because I want you to know the love is real. And look, y'all, take care of yourselves. There's nothing worse than wasted potential, straight up. Take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. You unlock your potential by taking care of yourself, straight up. And I'm the type of person, I'm a big giver. Like, I'll give to a bunch of other people. I'll make myself, frankly, overly accessible to a ton of different people. And for me, one of my unlocks in this season has been to make sure that I'm giving back to myself too. Because I can't be of any use if I'm not giving back to myself, right? So make sure you take care of yourself. You give back to yourself. You invest in yourself. Giving back to yourself is a form of self-care. It's a form of love. It's a form of activism. It's a form of resistance. Okay. So look, I love y'all. We will talk soon. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.